All right, good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to our Safety and Security Committee meeting. It is September 29th, 3 o'clock. Shortly after 3, we'll call this meeting to order. We are joined by almost the entire board. We have Ms. Carter with us, Mrs. Cash with us, Vice Chair Mahaffey, Dr. Martin, Mrs. Scott. Our counsel, Mr. Blumberg, is here. I think Superintendent Moore is with us virtually, and I'm not sure if any other board members are with us virtually as well. I don't have that pulled up. No, not at this time. Okay. All right. So we will get started and dive right in. You see the agenda before you and have that pulled up. So we'll take care of a little housekeeping, and if I can ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2021 Safety and Security Committee meeting.
I so move.
Have a motion and a second to approve our minutes from our last meeting. All those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Those minutes are approved. All right, this afternoon we're having a presentation on some of the findings of district-wide security assessment completed by the School Safety Advocacy Council. I know that this has been a long-awaited presentation, and we have some guests with us here from the School Safety Council. I think this is something that's come up in going back to our Safe Schools Task Force a while back to have a security assessment done. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to our security senior director, Office of Security, Russ Smith. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. And good afternoon, Board Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and Board of Education members. This afternoon, we're going to be providing some information to you on a comprehensive security assessment of the Wake County Public School System, all school campuses, and administrative facilities. Our desired outcomes for today are to review the purpose and the goals of the security assessment initiated by the district, provide an overview of the School Safety Advocacy Council, review the process that they use to conduct the security assessment, and then to learn of the findings of the assessment and the next steps in response to the findings. Just as a reminder, you as a board authorized the district in contracting the School Safety Advocacy Council to complete a security assessment of all facilities in July of 2019 with a purpose to support the continuous improvement of the safety and security of the Wake County Public School System, school campuses, and administrative facilities. I'm going to wait and let them let Julie catch up. I came out the gate running this today. Slide forward, Julie. Okay. So additionally, the district endeavored to obtain a comprehensive security assessment to include, but not limited to, access control procedures, physical security infrastructure, emergency response processes, visitor management systems, and all other aspects of school campus and administrative facility security. So just to give you a little bit of information about the School Safety Advocacy Council, they were established in 2005. They are a nationally recognized industry leader in school safety. They offer a multitude of services, just to name a few: expert witness testimony, school crisis tabletop exercises. They develop or review school emergency plans, and they also do school safety assessments. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Kurt Lavarello, who's the Executive Director of the School Safety Advocacy Council, and Sean Burke, to my immediate left, who's the President of the School Safety Council. They're going to provide you some information on the process they use for the assessment, and then do a high-level overview in this session of their findings. After the presentation, I'm going to come back and I'm going to provide you with information on our next steps, where we're going to go. from here. And we would ask that you would hold off the dialogue or questions until after we finish the presentation. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Sean and Kurt.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. And I appreciate you having us here this afternoon here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As some of you may have heard, I hail from Sarasota, Florida, and Sean is from Boston, Massachusetts, and together we'll be sharing our findings here. But I did want to say thank you for being here today, but even more importantly, thank you for sharing your confidence in us to come up here and provide this assessment to your district. And probably even more important than that, thank you for you and your district's commitment in school safety and having this committee and really prioritizing from what we saw here in the time we spent here for prioritizing the safety of the students here in Wake County. That means a lot, and that's not always the case as we travel around the country, but we certainly saw that and felt that while we were here. And so did all of our team that we brought up here at that time. So as Russ said, we've been around at the end of 2004 when we put this together, Sean and I. We did so with the idea that, with our backgrounds being law enforcement, we put this together with the idea that school safety cannot just be a law enforcement function. It's got to be an entire community. It's got to be a school board. It's got to be business members. It's got to be the students themselves. And one of the things that over the years that hasn't changed with us is we get asked a lot. We do a lot of media coverage for different events. Whenever there's a school shooting, we're usually either on CNN or Fox or NBC and the question I can always be assured of and asked every time is, what's the one single most important thing a district can do in school safety? Is it metal detectors? Is it, bulletproof windows? And our answer is always the same. All that stuff is nice, but it's the people things that mean the most in school safety and security. It's the contact with the kids. And certainly I'll express that we also, and our entire team, saw that and felt that while we were here the entire time, that there was a true connection with the young people that attend your schools and the adults that supervise those kids. And that's really very, very nice to see. The other thing that we pride ourselves in is a lot of training across the country. We do a lot of training. We're right now, since the last time we were here, of course, we had this whole pandemic thing grew after we finished our assessment, and so it's been a while since we've been here. But one of the things that we're pretty proud of over this past 2 years is that we have been chosen as the only organization in the country now to serve as the school safety related training for the FBI Academy. So we're front and center with that and institution. Sean is a graduate of the FBI Academy, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we're training some of the nation's leaders in law enforcement in this process of keeping kids safe. And so to move forward, as Russ had mentioned, I did want to just take a moment and tell you a little bit about the process, because the process is very important on how we looked at this coming into Wake County. And we've worked with some of the largest districts in the country. We've done assessments for Los Angeles County schools, Clark County schools in Las Vegas, Reno, Washoe County, right down to some of the very small charter schools across our country. So we've worked with a wide range of schools across the county, across the country, and you always see different aspects of school safety. But what's important is that our team comes in with a concept on school safety, and I'm going to share some of that with you to kind of kick this off. You know, we look at the assessment as a very valuable tool for you, and we're providing you this tool even after we load up and we hop on our planes and head back to our respective states. We're leaving you with a tool, and now you have to move forward with that process. And this tool, or probably a better term would be a guide to move forward with, is going to provide you a lot of things. It's going to provide you some insight into some of the opportunities to even strengthen what you already have. And you have a very good district, a lot of very, very committed people. I will tell you, the security department here under Russ's direction has been one of the easiest to work with that we've ever had the opportunity to work with across the country, and we've worked with a lot of them. But we know that security, like many other aspects of education, is not an unlimited basket of dollars out there. So you have important decisions coming up on where to spend those limited dollars. And of course, this guide and this tool that we're going to provide you, we hope will help you do that as you move forward in prioritizing your opportunities. You got a lot of complex decisions that lie ahead as you move forward. Some will be easy, and some may not be easy as you move forward. But never lose sight, as I feel you won't, with that opportunity to keep the focus on the safety of your students in town here. This is the safety. I've had the opportunity in the last 2 years to work very, very closely with the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Commission. I testified back about 1.5 years ago to our grand jury. And we really, you know, if I go back, I was involved in the review committee, the White House Review Committee on Columbine. When President Clinton convened a panel, I was pleased to be selected to serve on that panel and review that incident that happened there in Colorado. And fast forward now to Marjory Stoneman Douglas, which ironically is where I did my police career, was in Broward County, Florida. And just on the way up here yesterday, I was listening to this commission meeting there again. And times have truly changed in the scope of school safety over these years. Responsibilities. No longer are communities sitting back saying, well, it was just something we should have done and didn't. In Florida now, we're seeing not only civil indictments, but we're seeing criminal indictments handed down on people who should have done certain things and failed to do so. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of that when the grand jury releases its final report in the state of Florida. It's tied up right now in an appeal process, but we think it's probably just a month or two away from being released. And as many of you have probably already seen, the several indictments have already come down from that. So, not saying that to scare anybody, but we always tell districts that when those things loom, indictments and civil suits, and you do things because they're the right thing to do, not because these fears loom. You do the things because it's the right thing to do for the safety of your students and staff. And we have the utmost confidence you will, having spent the time here. Again, I can't tell you how pleased we were to work with the people we did. One of the things I started to commend your security staff. It's rare. It's very rare that we pull into a district of this size and we're not here because of a major crisis that happened. Typically, we're there on the back end of a major crisis that happened. That was not the case here. From the day we were contacted that we had won this award, we were keenly aware of the fact that there was no major crisis that had occurred here in your county. You were truly looking to have an outside set of eyes and ears come to your district and guide you on where you could keep kids safe. And I'll further that by telling you that, which is also not typical, from the time we had the opportunity to work with Mr. Smith and his team, we were given carte blanche to go anywhere and to look at everything, turn any rock over that we needed to turn over without hesitation. We didn't have shadows on our back as we walked campuses. They were there for us. If I picked up a phone and I called Russ because we needed something, it happened very, very quickly. But they exerted no pressure on us and made it very, very clear from day one when we won the contract. Russ said, there's nothing I don't want. I'm going to tell you just to give us a report, a true, honest report and a reflection of what you find. And you're even more than the folks sitting here, the parents of the students that attend school in your district should be very, very proud of that, because that's unusual. And we're very pleased to have seen that, and it made it a true pleasure to work here and to do all of our staff. We didn't run into, which is, again, I know it's kind of hard to understand it when I tell you we ran into no hurdles, because we always run into hurdles. We had none here. We didn't have a principal that stood in our way. There are other districts that won't let us on a particular campus or tell us not to do this particular campus. That never existed here, and you should be very, very proud of the team you have guiding your safety and security here in Wake County. The interesting thing also, I think, on a positive note, was the fact that we conducted a survey here, and it was a no pressure, just, run-of-the-mill kind of survey with your staff. And we were very proud to see at the end of that it was in a 90% range, and it's in the report, that your staff feels safe. Now, these are perceptions, of course, among a lot, but your staff, for the most part, the great majority of them feel very safe, and you should be very proud of that. That's a very, very high number, and that's a wide range of schools here in your very large county. There were opportunities along the way, which I'll share with you, that do reflect some of our findings. Now, as we get into the weeds of the findings, naturally, I know we're going to be moving behind closed doors somewhat to share, because those are never things you really don't want in the public arena, and I think the public is well aware of that. That no parent, I as a parent wouldn't want opportunities to strengthen security reflected in an open meeting. But we'll share some of the process with you. The first thing we did when we chose a team very carefully, and we're very methodical about the way we choose people to work on our team. Everybody there has a very diverse background in safety and security. And, so when we bring these folks together, we all march to the same beat, but we give the same orders to them, basically, that Mr. Smith gave to us. We don't want anything hidden. We want to know at the end of the day that we're giving a really good, comprehensive report to this district. They paid for it, and they deserve that. But more importantly, again, the students deserve that. So we put together the first phase, which is the information collection, where we get the information from to build this report that you now have. The first and most important part is the on-site, the physical assessment of your district and all the buildings and the campuses, and even after-school activities, which we looked into here as well. And that was wise to do that, and it was pointed out by, again, security staff that they wanted that looked into. And it was good timing because around the country, right prior to COVID hitting, the nation was experiencing an uptick in critical incidents at after-school activities across the country. So it made good sense for us to look at opportunities to strengthen that process while we were here as well. So that on-site assessment and analysis was one. The second thing was the staff interviews that we conducted. And of course, you don't see any names in reports, and we made that very clear to staff that as an outside independent contractor, we're not there. We were never here, and we pride ourselves in this approach. We're not in any district to play the gotcha game. We're not going to sneak around and do anything behind the scenes. We're here. We look at ourselves, and when we did the interview for here and everywhere else we've been, we look at ourselves as a partner in your school safety process. And this has been a good partnership. I was just sharing earlier with the board member here, you know, we talk about Washoe County, which is in Reno, Nevada. There, and in that particular case, we work directly for the Safety and Security Committee that exists in Washoe County. They're actually the ones that hired us, not the board, not the superintendent, but we report to that committee. They came to us with a one-year contract. We've been there 5 years now working with that particular county. And one of the things that prior to us, we've truly looked at becoming a partner with that district as they moved forward and we could assist them. So when we did staff interviews, we were really very clear that we're not using names in reports. You won't see a name in any of the reports because we want them to feel comfortable sitting and sharing with us any concerns that they may have that could help us and guide us into an area that we may need to look at. And there were a couple of them that are reflected in the report. We also reviewed a lot of documents. We reviewed policies, procedures, school safety plans, crisis plans, evacuation plans, reunification plans as part of the information collection. And that's an important part of this process as well. We also reviewed existing memorandums of understanding that you have with outside agencies such as law enforcement, fire, emergency management. I'm very pleased to say that, and again, another pat on your back, but your local law enforcement is very, very proud of what you do as well. They shared with us probably one of the best comments we heard continuously, and you have a number of police departments you work with, a couple of different jurisdictions, and we met with senior staff at those, but they shared with us how easy it was to work with your security department and be able to pick up a phone and get things done. And that's something certainly is not consistent as you look around the country, especially now. We've had a lot of battles, between local law enforcement and Department of Educations across the country, and we've kind of played and worked with a couple of those districts, but you deserve a pat on your back for that. We also reviewed all of your district-wide climate survey analysis to see what people were concerned about, what they had fears about, or what they didn't have fears about, and that was considered as part of the ending report. And again, those meetings with the first responders. So that was phase one of collecting all that data, the physical assessments. Our days are very long here. They started early in the morning. Most of our team was out of the hotel by 6 a.m. Most of the team was back at the hotel by 5. And we pay them very well because they're long, long days. At 5 o'clock, we'd order pizza, and we'd begin our writing in one common room that we had at the hotel. And that way we could all spring ideas off of one another, share ideas, share findings as we move toward this report or any hurdles. If there were ever any emergency things that along the way we found that had to be addressed right then and there, we would share them immediately with your security department. The phase two, when we moved into, are the recommendations that we put together for this final report. And that's, again, this guide and this tool. And I would caution all of you to, if anything, safeguard this like it's one of the most important things you have in your district. We have seen these things leak out, and it's never a good scenario when they do. This is not a document you want shared too far. Most of the districts, we recommend that it stay in one particular area of the district, typically a security or school police department. And people who view it, if they do view it, they do so in a closed quarters so that an actual document is not floating out there to where somebody get their hands on it and it winds up being a front page story. And lastly, the review and presentation, which is what we're here today for. We look at the team measures a couple of categories. We look at really areas of when our team goes out there, we look at first deterrence, security measures that are at your school that are perceived difficult to defeat by the outsider who's looking to do harm to your district. So we look at how much you're working toward deterring that type of activity from the very onset of that. Then we look at detection. How is your district and the staff and the folks at the schools detecting what could be a threat, which comes into a big phase of that is the training phase, and how well people are trained and conduct drills and to be able to move, which brings into what opportunities you have to delay a threat. And when I say delay a threat, that area is what kind of barriers are the district putting up? Some of them may seem like hard barriers, whether they be fencing or door locks or things like that. Some of them are just how much staff is out interacting with young people. And that's an important factor. We saw a lot of that. Again, that's one of the real positive things we saw. I don't think any of our folks ever came back. And they had marching orders at the beginning because we really, truly wanted to know, is this a school that has a lot of security flaws, or are there safety and security concerns that can be addressed with people, maybe paying more attention to students? And we didn't get any reports back that there were staffing flaws. And that's really a positive thing. Probably sometimes in cases more important than those physical things, because you know your kids, you know where they go. I often, when I do training around the country, and I used to be a school resource officer at an early phase of my life, and I said one of the most valuable things I ever did with my young people was, and I'm going to date myself here, but I used to give them Polaroid cameras. And I'd give them these cameras and I'd say, go out in the school and bring me back 10 pictures of you where you feel is the most unsafe place of our school. And I'd share that with my administrative team, and they'd bring me back these pictures. And oftentimes we'd have 6 or 7 pictures that myself and the senior staff at the school didn't know existed. And that means we had to do some work and open up those lines of communication better. I just shared with CNN not too long ago a story. They were talking about a shooting that had happened on a campus. And I said to them, I said, we carry a lot of tools, and they were trying to, it was a Florida-based story, and they were talking about arming the SROs with AR-15s and putting them in front of the schools, ready to shoot the first kid that came on with a gun, and it was alarming, the story. And I said, we don't stop a lot of school shootings because we're carrying AR-15s or any of that stuff. We stop a lot of school shootings in this country every single day because we know our kids. And that's where we have the greatest opportunity to continue to do that. So in that area of delaying, don't lose sight of the fact that we did measure the ability of your staff, and we're very proud to say that your staff was out there a lot with students from the morning, from the arrival of buses to the afternoon as you were sending kids off. We saw bus drivers greeting kids, and we'd walk on campus. Our team would walk on campus, and I told our team at one point, I said, anytime you're stopped on our campus, I want to know about that evening. I want to know who, and we were stopped a lot by custodians, by bus drivers would come out of their buses and come over and question who we were. Other parents would question us or call the police on us. Several of your SROs would stop us. One day I pulled into one of your schools. I was there earlier than the buses were arriving. I got there a little earlier. I think I was only parked there for about 2 minutes before an SRO came out to the back parking lot and questioned me, which is exactly what I would hope would happen. And so those things like that in that delay category are really important. We also looked at the response, and that response also does include some of that training and the drills that take place. And you'll hear some of that in some of the opportunities. We think there's some opportunity to strengthen the training aspect of what's going on. And we'll talk about that probably a little bit later. And then the recovery of a critical incident is what we look at. How prepared are you once, if and when an incident occurs, to recover from that incident? And those things are like reunification. And so we saw a lot of that that took place, and we were very proud, again, to report an issue. The only probably issue that I'd share with you here that I feel okay sharing with you here is we probably would have liked more access to and contact with, and this was not a fault of you or really the district, with the school nursing. We think that's a really important aspect of school safety, but we understand here it's an outside entity that oversees that process. And, a lot of the school nurses said they were instructed not to talk to some of our team members. And so that was one area that I think that could have gone a little different. But other than that, that's what I'll share with you. Again, as I look forward to this process here today, I can't go on enough as to what I saw this last week as the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission is kind of wrapping up their findings now, and it's the governor appointed these team members to meet, and they meet about every 2 or 3 months. And the issues that they're looking at, we passed legislation in Florida following that tragedy in 40 days, and some of the legislation we passed was very good. Some of it, as we look back 2 years later, we went, wow, did we need that? Or did we not need that? And those are the kind of decisions, you're going to be looking at as you move forward. There was a lot of opportunities to work together. In Broward County, we saw a lot of fragmented, we have a couple more police departments than you do in town. There's like 27 different municipalities trying to work with one school district, which presented a challenge there. And that challenge, when you looked at the totality of that tragedy, that failure to contact and have those contacts became a hurdle, and it certainly was reflected in the outcome of that incident. We didn't see that here. We saw a pretty cohesive team of folks working together. Now, there's always going to be speed bumps along the way that you have with outside partners and what have you, but for the most part, you all do a very, very good job of that. So with that, I know Sean will make some opening comments and then move forward.
And just briefly to touch on a couple of things, some that Kurt already went over. We definitely see this report as the roadmap for the improvements that you seek. We also leave the district with 2 different types of report. There is the district-wide report. That is an overview of things we find district-wide that are probably best dealt with on the district level. But also besides the district report, there are individual reports that are school-based. So each school in the district has had an individual report where we get into more of the smaller things that may be just particular to that school. Some of the issues or some of the things that are good, or some of the things that may need some help or improvement particular to that school those are reflected more in the individual reports. So you have them on both levels, but we see this report, again, as a roadmap moving forward, making improvements, making changes, and we know that that ultimately is what the district is looking for with this. Your next step, obviously, is prioritizing and implementation of our recommendations. But with our recommendations, we try to keep our reports as simple as possible, in that we know that district personnel, besides your fine district security department, is not made up of security experts. So when principals or teachers or anyone else reads this, we like to keep it in plain English. We follow the KISS method. We try to provide as many pictures as we can for our recommendations and for our findings. So when we say this may be an area you want to look at, we try to provide as many pictures as we can. We try to provide at least one solution, if not more, and try to give you examples of those solutions. So it's a really easy read. All of our recommendations, we always try to do low cost, no cost first. We understand the budgets of school districts around the country, and we understand that improvements that do not cost a lot of money or any money at all will be the first ones that can be done, and especially ones that make large impacts don't always cost large dollars. And lastly, and I think it's the most important thing that I'd like to talk about, is that our recommendations are all based in facts. Unlike some of the other organizations that do these assessments that come in and help districts, and believe me, we've had to come into districts to fix some of these reports that they have found. We're not banking experts who retrofitted ourselves to school safety because that's where the money is. All of our team, especially Kurt and I, have all spent time in school hallways, considerable time in school hallways. We know what works in the school culture and what doesn't work in the school culture. We have been blessed enough to work with districts all around the country and make recommendations. So every recommendation that you find in that report, we know works because it's working somewhere else in this country. Now, that doesn't mean you are going to take all of our recommendations. You may find some more important than others, or you may find the ones we make you just can't do. Or every community is different. Every community has an appetite or has a culture that is different from others. So all of those recommendations are being done somewhere. The decision will be yours as to what degree you follow them. And with that, I think we will close.
Thank you, gentlemen. So just talking a little bit about the larger picture, next steps. There's a lot of reports that are out there. There's a lot of information to be looked at. And so to start off with, the Office of Security is going to organize and lead a district committee to further unpack in greater detail each assessment report for possible action. We're going to include in the committee individuals that are cross-representative of schools, central services folks, division of representatives from the Division of Principals and Assistant Principals, and others. And the committee will identify priorities and then action steps. So what are some of the focus areas for the next steps? So we'll also look at delivering, how we're going to deliver and review the school-based reports with school principals and as well as area superintendents to make sure that everyone is aware of what's in the reports and how we need to go forward. We will review the assessment of central services administrative sites with the district committee and other district leaders as appropriate. We plan to examine each recommendation in terms of its potential implementation and then determine the areas of priority to adopt for action as appropriate. And then we plan to assess the resources necessary to address the prioritized areas, and then plan to chart a path forward for the work that's going to be done based upon the accepted recommendations. So there's a lot of work, essentially. This is just the first step, and we're excited to have this information, and now we've got an area of where to go and start going down that path of how we're going to get there and what we're going to prioritize. As they mentioned, there's a lot of things in these documents, and we're not going to be able to address everything. And as he said earlier, some of it's going to be based upon physical implications, but some of it's going to be based upon our community and how our community, how we want to implement those things based upon our community. So all of that being said, we're at a point now where finally we can call on you and ask you if there's any dialogue or questions that you guys would like to have.
All right. Any board member questions? Vice Chair Mahaffey.
Well, I think it's a little difficult without seeing the full report, but I appreciate the thoroughness, and Russ, that just shows a confidence in your work and your team's work to just let somebody go and discuss it, and I think that's what we expected, and just to hear that is really great, and hearing, how receptive our staff members and parents were, and our SROs. I do have a question about the committee, and I appreciate that there are going to be diverse representatives, but does that include any, like bus drivers or TAs or teachers and across the board? Because I know those were specifically mentioned in the...
I think that's a good point, Ms. Mahaffey, and we certainly can look at expanding. Certainly we want to put together a diverse committee. Probably what we won't do, though, is we can't get it so large that
Right.
we won't be able to function properly. But I think it would be appropriate to have representation that you're speaking of.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cash?
This is a great interest to me, and I appreciate that. The report is really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's no surprise to me that Russ Smith would open up the department and allow you to give the best advice possible, so thank you. How will you be reviewing the reports with our school administrators? Is that through a committee process?
So that'll be probably one of the first action steps that we'll take.
Okay.
And sharing it with, coming up with a plan that fits within some of the recommendations that they made, to share it with school administration, but also with area superintendents. So to me, that's one of the first priorities, is to get that out there. As he said, and I think a point that was made, if there were some findings were something that needed some immediate attention, that was addressed before they even left town. Not many, if any of those, but,
So I know that most of your review, and I'm assuming your findings, had to do with, I would say, sort of on-the-ground, facility-related, hard types of findings. Did you all review any of our policies and budgets for opportunities to improve and strengthen safety in our schools? Is that a part of your review, or again, are you just kind of, boots on the ground, looking at sort of the hard type facilities type things that will be more of an operational?
Yeah, to answer your
Focus.
question, yes, we did review those MOUs that dealt with safety and security, as well as any of the documents housed in the security office that dealt with policies, procedures, or school critical incident planning. We did review those. We did not review budgets and how budgets play into. That's something that really falls back in your court to kind of see where the dollars and cents were, and that's really wouldn't be under our purview necessarily. But all those other documents, yes, we did review.
And I'll add just one thing to that, Mr. Sutton. As far as policy, any policy that the security department deals with in reference to visitors to campuses, emergency operations planning, preparedness, things that are prohibited on school campuses, code of conduct, all of that was shared with them for this review.
From a philosophical, I guess, standpoint in terms of safety and security, and we've had many conversations as a board going back over the years, and, at sometimes struggle with maintaining security and safety on our campuses, but also trying to allow an open attitude, I guess, or perception of schools, realizing that schools are part of the community, and communities feel like they should have a certain level of access to schools, particularly your ball fields and, arenas and gyms where we've got facility usage agreements and that sort of thing. Even some of the places where we even share facilities or joint use, what we call joint use agreements with parks and towns and our schools. What is your philosophy, I guess, around maintaining that sort of open community participation in the campus, but at the same time maintaining our safety protocols and procedures? And in that same vein, a few years ago, we don't hear it as much, about the hardening of schools and having metal detectors and bars and fences and that sort of thing versus having more of a softer approach, if you will. And I think that is one that, as a board over the years, we've tried to maintain both a more softer feel while at the same time balancing the safety. So it's oftentimes it's a juggle. Your assessment of kind of where we are, and then your philosophy as an organization, where do you sort of sit around that?
I'm going to chime in that I appreciate that the level of discussion is at the philosophical and process level and not about any specific recommendations or potential vulnerabilities. So I just wanted to echo that I think this is at a good level. Thank you.
Well, the balancing act you have as a board is the same balancing act that boards all across the country have. Philosophically, we do not make any recommendations, and we do not believe that schools should look like prisons. We do not believe in that. We believe that they should be open, they should be part of the community as much as they can within limitations. We have to be realistic about what we look at as an organization and what we recommend. We have to recommend what is the best for whatever district we are working with. The unfortunate part is we can't look back and, we use it as an example. Unfortunately, we don't live in Mayberry anymore. There are certain threats to our children, there are certain threats to our school, to our staff, that have to be addressed, that we have seen around the country. So without saying we're going to make schools a prison, because we don't want that appearance. Anytime we can go as soft as we can, we like it. There are changes that we recommend that sometimes go against that fully open campus. And that just boils down to that is the safer option. So again, sometimes, unfortunately, we can't be as open as we can, but we can still be part of the community. We can still assure parents that your child is the safest with these changes that we are going to make. And these changes aren't taken lightly. They're taken in light of your child's safety, your employee's safety, teacher safety. And unfortunately, they're just real-world decisions that are going to have to be made.
And just to echo what Sean said, you know, my version of his Mayberry comment would probably be, I spoke to a group of parents at a statewide PTA meeting not too long ago, and they were concerned where we were headed with safety and concerns. And you can go certainly find folks around the country now that would have come in here and did this assessment and recommended towers be built and bars on windows. And again, you will not see that in our reports. But I shared with that particular committee a picture of the entrance of Walt Disney World. And I said, here's the happiest place on earth, where you walk in now and everybody is searched. They got to open their bags and they have to put their thumbprint down, and there's a marked police car under every entrance to Walt Disney World. And I said, whoever would have thought the day we'd see that at Walt Disney World. But you know, at the end of the day, it's still the happiest place on earth. And we just did it in a way in which it's deliverable and it's an easier pill to swallow. Because at the end of the day, when we're called into districts, and oftentimes we have parents there who've lost ones due to school tragedies, all of those kind of talks go out the window when there's parents who've lost ones. So we're going to present to you the best way forward. But we're certainly, you will not find anything, I promise you this, that you won't find anything in this report that will make you sit back and shake and shudder over thinking that your district's going to look like something that it wasn't before. You're just going to have a more smart way of doing some of the things that we recommend.
Thank you for that. And I guess my last question or comment, I appreciate the district-wide report and then the individual school reports, because every campus is going to be uniquely different. And I'm thinking about how to operationalize such a plan. And I guess my question is around the challenges when you look at our district and 191 campuses, and I imagine, you know, us in sort of an urban, suburban type community, your security challenges are different in a rural school versus one that's in a suburban community versus one that's downtown.
Sure.
And then in a community like here versus a school in a New York City or Chicago. Can you touch on a little bit at a high level the different challenges posed by security in a school in an urban area versus a urban, suburban versus a rural
Yeah.
type thing, other than sort of I mean, obviously there's some obvious ones, but.
So, yeah, and that's a very, very valid point, and I'm glad you posed that question, because we do look at every school individually, and there's so many factors that go into each individual school staffing levels, number one, at school, where that school sits. They were just struggling with this very topic at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas hearing. They were trying to come up with a formula on how many officers per how many kids there should be on their schools in Broward County. And I said to them, don't just pull a number out of the air. That you'd have to have one officer per 1,000, because that's a bad formula to use, because there's so many different factors long before law enforcement that play into the overall safety and security of a school, where the school sits. Again, like you pointed out, the different geographical areas around a school. Does it sit close to an airport? Does it sit close to a waterway? Does it, those kind of factors play in. So, yeah, every school is looked at very individual. While we do use somewhat of a best practice approach, the best practice approach is geared to schools that are similar in nature to the school that we might be looking at if we're looking for a strategy. You had a wide range of entrances to schools dating back into the 30s and 40s all the way up to schools that were just built. So there was a wide range that our team had to take into consideration when looking at those different schools. What it's not going to be a perfect world. Every school, you're not going to be able to build the perfect structure of some of these schools, but there's also a historical perspective to schools. There's a community sense of that school. And I fully respect what you said with, parents coming on board. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that in the next session. But yeah, we truly do look at every school individually and what makes up that school. And sometimes it's the staff that can add that piece that we may not be able to get to physically. We may have to do with staff, and then staff may have to work harder knowing that challenge exists at that school. So I think that's about the best I can answer to you.
And you are absolutely right when we have found this to be the best process after years of doing this is individual school reports and then one overarching report. And you are exactly right, sir. We take all of the factors into account. The recommendations are going to be different in a school we have done in Chicago or downtown Las Vegas than they would be in rural Nevada where there's nothing but horse farms. So the recommendations may be different. The end result is safety of the children. But not only the external factors, but we also take into account the internal factors. We did a statewide school for the deaf and blind. And you can imagine the challenges and the factors we had to take into account, which was mostly had to do with special populations. So not only are we worried about exterior or external factors, we're worried about the internal factors too. So not only are we looking at the neighborhood, the crime rate, the problems that are going on in the neighborhood by interviewing the people in the neighborhood, by interviewing the people in the school, them telling us what problems they are facing. For an example, fencing. Sometimes that's a very good option in an urban environment simply because of the dangerousness of incidents from the neighborhood going over to the school area. So that is sometimes a recommendation where that wouldn't probably be a recommendation in a rural school because of the vastness of it and because of the lack of people that are around there and the incidents that happen. But we also look at that school. Does that school have a high population of special education? What are the physical limitations of the students in there? So we try to get as great a picture as we can, both external and internal. And you will notice if you review any number of those reports, a lot of them are completely different, just by what you said, is just different parts of your county, different populations that are within it. So we definitely do take that into account and judge it by that.
All right, well, I think we're ready to move to the next section of our presentation. There are no other board questions? Anything else from staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. At this time, then, we will adjourn this portion of our meeting. Thank you all for joining us, the public. And if I could entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Do we need to add any statutory factors to that?
Yeah.
Isn't it all on the agenda? It's all in the agenda.
Oh. Okay. I'm pulling it up. It must be on the, Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we go into closed session for the purpose of consulting with the board attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to formulate plans by a local board of education relating to emergency response to incidents of school violence, or to formulate and adopt the school safety components of school improvement plans by a local board of education or a school improvement team.
Second that.
Got a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, second by Ms. Cass, to go into closed session for the purpose of consulting with the board attorney in order to preserve attorney-client privilege. And as was stated and as printed on the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, we are now in closed session. Thank you.
It threw me because it was on the.